Okay, Erika, I have to start by asking the question I love to ask. Are you ready?
Ready?
Can you believe that we're having this conversation?
No, not at all. I didn't even think that it was possible.
Well, so why don't you start us off with sharing a little bit with the ladies listening about how you found yourself on this journey and how we met?
So I have been dealing with a long fertility journey since 2018. And when I've gone through so many IVF clinics, I was at that moment in time where I'm like, nothing is happening, nothing is working. And for almost 9 years, my husband and I have been trying to conceive. And I looked at a podcast or online, like on my iPhone, and then somehow I typed in fertility, and then you popped up, and then I started listening to your podcast. And I've never listened to anything before, and so you were my first.
I love that I was your introduction to podcasting.
Yes.
So, okay, well, so obviously, let's back up the bus a little bit, because you mentioned that you had been trying to conceive for 9 years and you started looking for podcasts. So tell me what caught your attention about this one. Like, why would you, after so many IVF clinics, as you described, what would get you interested in mindset?
Well, nothing else was working, and I've done multiple retrievals, and I've done Reiki and carried a bunch of rocks, and I've done acupuncture for several years. And I never really thought about my mindset. I just thought, well, here's my problem. These doctors are here to help me. And we can just create these babies in the lab and put it back in me, and it should work, right? Because I was, at the time, 29 when I married my husband. And then we tried to conceive for about a year or so on our own, and it just did not happen. And then, bam, they were like, well, the only way you can have a baby is through IVF methods. And that was your only chance.
Did you have a diagnosis? Like, how at 29 does somebody get told, or around 29, how does somebody get told that IVF is their only chance?
I also questioned that too. They explained that I had a low AMH and my egg counts were not as robust or as much as someone in that age range. It was more like of a 50-year-old. And I only had a few eggs. And the longer I wait, the chances of those eggs being healthy is just going to not be as good. And they gave me unexplained infertility and low AMH. And at that time, there weren't much funds for fertility treatment. And so we really had to take a pause until we could afford it.
Wow. Now, did they ever diagnose you with anything other than low AMH or unexplained fertility issues?
So they did. I eventually went in 2019, started going to a famous New York City clinic for fertility treatments. And they did say that I had a polyp that they needed to remove to make sure that the uterus is clear and healthy, that could possibly interfere with implantation. So I had to take care of that. And then just do a round of IVF cycle, my very first one. Because again, they didn't have an explanation about why I had low AMH and low AFC counts. And that was just the solution.
And so after you did that surgery, what happened?
Well, we were able to get 5 embryos during my first retrieval in 2019. And they said we just need to put them back one by one. And because of my age at that time was 30, 31, actually 31, that the embryos most likely are probably normal because I am still young. And if I wanted to test those embryos, we had to pay an extra like several $1,000s, which was already costly. And we had to pay out of pocket for our first like retrieval. So that was that.
Right. Okay. So out of those 5 embryos that you had, and did you use every one of them, or did you like do 2 at a time? Like, it would be great to hear a little bit about that.
We did a fresh transfer first, and then that didn't take. We had to use up our other embryos as well because later on insurance did kick in. But in order to get another retrieval to accrue more eggs and embryos, we had to exhaust our embryos first. So then we had, we still had a few, like 4 more. And we just did 1 at a time, keep putting it back. But then again, they found another polyp. You know, we would always have to do another saline sonogram to make sure the uterus is okay. Why is it not sticking? Then I did an ERA biopsy to make sure that the timing was correct. And so I had to go through that surgery too, or that stimulation, like a fake one. And so all this time, you know, trying to prep to put those embryos back, I underwent a lot of hormones. And so I think that didn't do so well for my body.
Oh, what was the big tell that all that hormone supplementation didn't do well for your body?
So after like we exhausted like all our embryos, you know, those 5 over time in the span of like 2 years with that clinic, I was like, well, nothing's taking. And, you know, now it's time for another retrieval. I've exhausted everything. Let's move forward. But at the same time, at that end, when we're doing, like, we're ready to go into another one, they ended up seeing a cyst in one of my ovaries. And they said that's typically normal. They come and go. But at the same time in 2021, my grandmother had died the same day when I was supposed to see my doctor. And someone else, like his resident, saw me because he was too busy to see me. And so all these things just crumbled all at once. And I decided I need to just step back and not come here anymore. So.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So at this point, you've done a retrieval. You had a couple surgeries for polyps.
2.
2 surgeries for polyps. And then you just got to a point where you're like, you know what, we're done here. My grandma died and something just doesn't feel right. So what did you do after that?
So I also questioned, it's like, well, could I have endometriosis? I had asked my doctor previously, and he had mentioned a lot of women can still get pregnant even if they have it, and that they wouldn't be able to do anything to test for it. And the only way is, like, honestly, surgery through laparoscopic procedure. So that was always in the back of my mind as to why nothing really stuck, right? And so when that death occurred of my grandma, I ended up leaving, took it as a sign to go to another facility, and then I ended up switching to another famous clinic in New York City. And I would say took a break for about like a year or so. And then she confirmed that I actually had a cyst, but then it went away and that we were okay. And so then I proceeded to do another 2 rounds of IVF with her. Yeah.
Okay. And what were the results of those 2 rounds?
So the second IVF retrieval that I did, it ended up having, we were able to have 2 embryos, but the embryos this time we ended up testing and they were both abnormal. So, and they are currently in the freezer, still there. I did not discard them just in case one day if we may need it. I believe one was completely abnormal and the other one was mosaic, and they had mentioned that there's still a possibility maybe it can correct itself if we were to put it back in. So if they're in the freezer right now still. And yeah, so that was our second IVF cycle. And then she had mentioned doing like a back-to-back protocol and encouraged me to do another one. But at that time, the lab was closed. And so I didn't end up completely doing a back-to-back protocol. So I skipped a month, and then we did another retrieval, did a different protocol. And then we ended up having no eggs retrieved, no embryos. I was completely burnt. And then she also saw a cyst in my ovary, actually 2 cysts, one in each one.
Wow. So what were you thinking at that point? Because at this point how long had you been on the journey at that point?
Honestly, it started in like probably 2018, and then 2019 with our first fertility clinic till like 2020-ish. And then 2021 went in with her. There was some time.
Yeah.
But we've been married since 2015. So we were trying on our own previously a couple of years before finding out of my medical conditions and the treatments that I needed.
Wow. So it is no joke, because 2024, that's 9 years.
Yeah, it will be. Or it is.
Well, okay. So then you're doing all these treatments, and you were talking about how mindset was the thing that you hadn't looked at. So what made you, after listening to this crazy former prosecutor's podcast, like what made you think to yourself, hey, despite the fact that all these other things hadn't worked for me, why not give this a shot? Because you have to admit, after you've been to some well-known clinics and then you find yourself like with no baby, it's a little bit of a leap, Erika, to say, I'm going to try this mindset shit.
So this whole journey, I always stuck to like getting acupuncture, right? I saw several practitioners there, didn't really find the right one. It was the same thing with the clinics, didn't really find the right one. And then once I flared up with these cysts in my ovaries, it was confirmed I had a diagnosis now. I had endometriosis. I ended up having stage 4 endometriosis. Yes, stage 4 endometriosis. It was everywhere in my pelvis and my uterus and my ovaries. And by that third IVF cycle, I ended up feeling like I needed to explode every time I took a poop or I had my menstrual. Yeah, so it was really bad. It was like something that I did to myself. Like, how come we couldn't have a baby on our own? Did I do this to myself? I was on birth control for a number of years, and then now we're trying to have a baby and it's just not happening. Am I being punished? So all these things I had in the back of my mind, right? And so I had to take a step back and try and again help myself feel better. So I took the initiative in finding a wonderful surgeon. His name is Dr. Andrea Vidali, and I really wholeheartedly felt that he helped me try and clean up or excise my endometriosis, because only a limited amount of surgeons know how to deal with this condition, especially when you're trying to preserve your fertility. And I had other doctors who were saying, oh, you just need to remove, just to drain the cyst and then just do IVF again. But if you drain a cyst, it's going to grow right back. So it just didn't make sense. And I saw like specialists from Columbia, NYU, I sought all these other second opinions and stuff until I found Dr. Vidali. So it was quite a journey, had that excised, went in for other clinics again for retrievals, and then it just didn't work. And then I was at the point where I was going to take my cousin's eggs in another IVF clinic that she froze because she knew about my story. And I love her. Who would do that for me? I never expected it. And so I honestly took a step back and was like, this whole history of all these surgeries and me trying to fix this problem that end up having this unknown diagnosis going into known stage 4 endo. It's like, oh, okay. And then finding out I had all these other autoimmune conditions on top of that. It was just all a learning process. And so I was feeling desperate. Last year, just didn't know what to do. Here I am doing this all to my body. All these hormones led me to this feeling of just like pain when I took a poop. And, every time I had my period, I didn't want to be in that same position again. New hormones were just not good for me. And at that time, my cycles were starting to slow down and my periods were like a day and a half. And so I said to myself, I don't want surgery again. And I wanted to gift myself something different. I just wanted to be happy. And in that search is how I found your podcast, and just really trying to take a step back and say, hey, I need to start making myself feel happy. And so that's how I found you, Rosie.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Erika, think about this because, because I know you and I know your journey, it still blows my mind to hear the series of events, because here you are, this young, vibrant woman. And then next thing, you just want to have a baby, you're in love, you're married, and you want to have this incredible life. But then you find yourself several IVF cycles deep, multiple clinics, cysts, surgeries, stage 4 endometriosis that you had to find the one specialist that knows how to do it while preserving your fertility, and then more IVF, and that none of that's working.
And an autoimmune condition on top of it, and then giving a percentage of pretty much nothing of being able to conceive.
Okay, so that's insane. I mean, that's kind of the context for your experience here, because if you look on the outside, this looks bad, girl. I mean, you've got a janky fertility history on paper, right? It looks bad, but you had the sense, Erika, you get a lot of credit for having the resilience and the peace of mind and the presence of mind to be able to say, hey, I want to be happy. I want to gift myself the ability to be happy in this process because I've been through so much.
Yeah.
I mean, and then Erika, think about it, basically being told you had zero chance.
Pretty much.
Wow. And so you decided to roll the dice here.
Yeah.
And so what did you learn?
I learned that nothing, was something this whole journey was meant for me to learn about myself and what I'm capable of becoming. And it taught me how to just appreciate and forgive myself. I'm not a bad person, and over time I learned how to heal and forgive. And you taught me that, and just moving forward and knowing that I am loved. God does love me, reconnecting to faith and just being strong. And there's always going to be these bumps in the road, but you just have to learn how to get over them. And family is everything, and they're here to support. And despite what other people tell you about their opinions, oh, it'll be okay. You can adopt, you can do this, you can do that. You just have to trust yourself, make sure you get the right team, and just go with how you feel, right? In the right way, and not make some kind of rash decision. I feel like I did that multiple times because I was feeling so desperate. It's okay, what's the next thing? What's the next thing? And I was feeling like I was running out of time. And so I learned that it was okay to take a step back. You always mentioned in the meetings, I have my ovaries, I have my uterus, I still have a period. It might be short, but it's still there, right? So that's a great sign. And hope, and just continuing that journey, and just be happy is so important, especially your mindset, because I never really thought about that. I was just stuck. You get stuck in that oh my gosh, here it goes, another month getting my period, it's not happening, and you just get so down.
Yeah.
And all that negativity, it just really is not good. Really bad energy. And expanding my bum squat was so important too. So getting on my nutrition, I found a great nutritionist who helped me, and I really feel like she helped get my gut repaired. Her name was Nora. And then also reconnecting with faith. I really was struggling with the loss of my grandmother. She was not here anymore. And it's again, I felt like being punished, right? But she's always with me, and making sure I go back to church and just keep praying. Wow. And just having that faith to keep going. That's what she wanted me to do. Right. And so I think that's what I learned a lot about myself, is to never give up. And there's always hope and there's always tomorrow. And if you want something and you feel like this is the path that you need to take, then you should do it. So nutrition, faith, and exercise. I did start doing exercises and going to join this. I took Pure Barre, which helped a lot of pelvic floor. And again, with my acupuncturist, she swears it's her acupuncture. I know, I have a really great one now. So she's my secret. I don't want to share her. But
that's great. Well, I mean,
but yeah,
think about all this, Erika, when you think about all of these things, like, you were willing, because so many people would have tapped out where you were. And I actually remember our very first conversation, and I remember your husband being on the call. I remember being so impressed by the fact that you guys were so committed. And despite the numbers being against you, all of the failures, the multiple clinics, the multiple surgeries, all of these things, it was very obvious to me that you guys really wanted this child and you weren't going to stop. So tell us, like, after, you're working on your mindset, like, what ultimately happened? Because when I saw you in New York this year, things were different.
Oh yeah. So we had my husband's 40th birthday in Florida, and we had his parents. They always come because they're always great. They love us, right? And I was still committed to my faith and going to church. And it was like Ash Wednesday that week. And so I was like, I've been going to church every Sunday, so let me go find one near us. We went to, actually stayed at my aunt's place in Tampa. And so I went there with her. I dragged her to church. I was like, let's go. And then it's so much different in Tampa, in Florida. I guess they didn't have much restrictions with like COVID and whatever. And I ended up going to church, and then drank the blood of Christ. So I was like, heal me, Lord. I was like, come on. And then, so I did my thing. And then I made sure I went to Ash Wednesday in Orlando when we, after Disney. And later on in January, when we came back, when we came back in February, March, right? That's when I was going to check my, for my period. It wasn't coming. And I said, okay, let's do a pregnancy test. But, I know how it is. It always comes. It's just maybe a little late. And lo and behold, we were pregnant. It was positive.
Wait a minute, Erika. Wait a minute. So you went from multiple rounds of failed IVF, stage 4 endometriosis, abnormal embryos, being told this was never going to happen, basically. Autoimmune condition, cysts.
I did IUIs too, polyps.
We're at it. Like, this is a salad of crazy fertility stuff, and we're just putting some dressing on it because you ended up getting pregnant naturally in Florida.
Yes.
Wow.
Disney magic.
I mean, did that blow your mind? Because again, like, this is the thing that I want women to really hear, is because when things look really bad, that's where you open the door to a miracle. And that's exactly what you did. Like, could you believe it when it happened?
No, not at all. I was just so happy. I was starting to lose weight. I also have liver issues, by the way, too. It's bad. And I don't even drink alcohol. I also prediabetes, all those other things. I have all these factors. And it just turned out like it could have been, or it is, with my autoimmune stuff. But I never thought that this would happen and we would be pregnant naturally. But I'm so grateful because I decided that I didn't want any more hormones. And I was at the border of like going to see Dr. Murray and get some rejuvenation PRP with my ovaries. And he's like, oh, it's probably your uterus. It's just the lining. And I was like, oh, maybe. And but I was like, no, I'm not going to do it. I'm just going to be happy, lose the weight, exercise, do my gut thing with Nora. And here we are. And church.
Wow. I mean, when you think about this and you think about all of the things, I mean, all the resilience that you developed as a result of this, I mean, this is some of the best preparation for being a mom that I could imagine.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, and think about the way you were able to make decisions, Erika. I mean, that's this whole mindset piece is like, you said that you made a decision that the hormones were not for you anymore. So it's like there was a switch that flipped in your brain, that your brain was listening, Erika. You're like, I'm not doing this hormone stuff anymore. And boom, next thing you know, you're pregnant naturally. So how far along are you?
So as of this past Wednesday, we are 21 weeks and we are 5 months.
I can't believe it, because when I saw you in New York, I think you were 10 weeks when I saw you in New York.
Yeah, it was really early.
I was like, oh man, you barely had a cute little bump then. It was like, it was under your sweater. I was like, oh, she looks so cute. I mean, so what are some of the things that you want the women listening who might be in a position where they're being told that they have no chance and that their fertility history is janky and that they should just think about giving up? Like, what would you want them to know?
I would like them to know that as long as there's always hope and that you really want this to happen, there are ways, right? That it is possible. You do have to do your research. You can't believe everything that a doctor says, and the doctor's not going to solve all your problems. They try to bring you up to as much of a percentage of a normal, like, fertile person, but again, it's just still very low. So even IVF is available if you have access to that. It's not a guarantee. And it can be very costly. And these medications that you introduce to your body, there are some side effects that you may not be aware of until later on. And then you're like, oh crap, but everyone's journey is different. And as long as you keep trying or keep figuring out what's best for your body until you make a decision, you should just keep going for it. But just remember, there are like pros and cons, and you should ultimately listen to your own gut and your own body, and your mindset is so important, and it plays a big factor in it to just keep on, moving forward.
That's so beautiful, Erika. And, thank you so much for sharing your experience, because there's going to be so many women listening to this out there that have been told something similar and maybe are in despair. Maybe their faith is lacking. Maybe part of them wants to give up, but you are living proof of the power of faith over fear and the power of mindset and being resilient and thinking differently, because you assembled a team around you of people that could think differently and could see something bigger in you than just your statistics and your past. So thank you so much for that. I'm sending you and Chris so much love. I can't wait for you guys to meet this baby, and please send me pictures.
Yes, we're so excited. I'd always dreamt of being on your podcast, so I'm grateful. So thank you for having me.
Oh, of course. Are you kidding me? I'm just so glad you went from being a listener to a guest. And it is truly my honor, Erika. It's for women like you, so brave, so kind and generous and truly committed to being a mom, that I do this work. So I love you, woman, and everyone is rooting for you.
Thank you so much, Roseanne.
Love this episode of the Fearlessly Fertile podcast? Subscribe now and leave an awesome review. Remember, the desire in your heart to be a mom is there because it was meant for you. When it comes to your dreams, keep saying hell yes.